countdown, but welcome to the third day of Black Cannabis Week. So, for those of us who have been participating and acknowledging Black Cannabis Week, this is our third day of Black Cannabis Week. As you know, Black Cannabis Week spans 7 days. Today is probably outside of the history component because today and the history day are kind of commingled a little bit. But today is the acknowledgement of all topics around hemp. So today's conversation will actually be with Nana Kwaku Ajiman from the Hempire Association of Ghana from Accra, Ghana. Welcome, Nana.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. When we talk about, our organization is the Diasporic Alliance for Cannabis Opportunities. We know that the diaspora runs deep and it runs wide. And we also know that within that deepness and that wideness is wealth of information, wealth of history, but also right now looking at many of the opportunities that are happening in cannabis. And a lot of those opportunities are happening around us. So we want to put ourselves into it. So tell us what Hempire Association of Ghana is doing to correct that.
Well, thank you very much. The Hempire Association of Ghana is a non-governmental organization. It's an advocacy body, and this body spends its time educating people about cannabis. Essentially, we talk a lot about industrial hemp because of its low THC properties. And you see, there seems to be, well, not that there seems to be, there is a lot of confusion in Ghana and in many parts of Africa about hemp. Many people believe that hemp is something that you smoke that is packed with THC and which gets you high. Many people are unable to differentiate from industrial hemp and marijuana. So we have been leading a campaign for several years, not just so that people can recognize the vast difference between the two species, but we've also been working with our parliamentarians and other stakeholders in order to assist Parliament to change the laws that they currently had. As it stands right now, we have had a law change. The law was changed in 2020, but it only legitimized the cultivation of industrial hemp. It didn't legitimize the cultivation of marijuana. And since that time, we've been waiting for a legislative instrument to be approved. And the legislative instrument is a document that also has to pass through Parliament and it operationalizes the law. For example, it will tell you how much the license fee will be if you wish to apply for a license to cultivate industrial hemp. It also talks about the wide variety of licenses that there are. For example, cultivation, processing, production, storage, distribution. There are about 10 separate licenses that you can apply for, research and development as well. Now, we've been pushing that agenda. We've got the law changed. We're waiting for the legislative instrument. It's unfortunate that it has taken over 2 years to get to a point where it is now going to be approved. Parliament is on recess at the moment, and they will resume in the third week in October. So that's probably about 6 weeks' time. And the Parliament won't be sitting for too long because, of course, that tapers into the Christmas period. So I think at least 2 weeks into December, the end of the second week of December, um, that Parliament will go into recess again. But during that period between the third week of October and the end of the second week of December, we anticipate that the legislative instrument will get a smooth passage through Parliament, and that will take us into the new year, whereby we can now apply to the Ministry of Interior for the various licenses that we wish to apply for. So we've spent a lot of time in promotional videos, having interviews, writing. We write a weekly newsletter, if you like, which goes out every week to thousands of people. That it's either educating them about what is happening in terms of the system and the process, where we are at the moment, and also tells them about what's going on in the rest of the world with the legalization of marijuana, dispensaries, what can be done with industrial hemp because it has so many uses. So every week we communicate with who we call our constituents, just to let them know exactly what is happening. That's
Wow.
the way.
Yeah, yeah, that's really important because the same thing here in the United States, what we see that's really important is education, particularly when it comes to our communities, people who look like us. All the times I've ever traveled to Ghana, I have to be honest, I've never heard of anyone mention cannabis. I probably saw a leaf or an image of it a couple of times, but when I was invited to the UN when they were rescheduling cannabis. I think that was like around 2018, 2019. It was right before COVID. And one of the things that they gave us was like this little book, like a UN report on cannabis. And I did not realize what a driving economic force cannabis was in Ghana. At that time, I think when the UN did that report, Ghana was number one. When most of us think of cannabis cultivation, distribution, we think of countries like Canada. I was so surprised that Ghana was on the map for cannabis. Let me ask you, why do you think that? Well, one, tell us why Ghana is a good region to actually cultivate cannabis.
Well, it's all about the climate, isn't it? We have the perfect climate. We're sitting virtually on the equator, and so we get the right amount of sunlight and everything. Um, and we have good rainy seasons that are fulfilling. And cannabis is something that doesn't take that amount of water anyway. So we're sitting right on the equation. We're able to cultivate 3 times a year with ease. We don't really need the greenhouses or anything like that. Not at this moment. So the outlay is quite small, to be honest with you. It's not like in the USA or the Canadas where the climate is much different. You must have greenhouses, you must have your lights, you must have extractor fans, and all the rest in order to put together to generate a good crop. In Ghana, it's completely different. It's tropical, it's tropical, and so all the plants grow like wildfire. To be perfectly honest with you, so we've got the ultimate in climates, and that's why people from the USA and Canada are actually queuing up to apply for a license here in Ghana because it will obviously reduce their outlay because they've got huge expenses when they're cultivating in the USA and Canada. Because parts of the USA you can only cultivate outside twice, if that. And of course, Canada is north of the border, and Canada is even colder than the USA. So I mean, the dependency on greenhouses and all the other artificial methods that you have to use to cultivate cannabis to get a good crop is something that is missing here. It's unfamiliar grounds here. Um, we've got vast amounts of water bodies all over the place, albeit some is being poisoned now. But where we want to centralize the cultivation of cannabis is virtually next to the River Volta, which is a huge man-made man-made river. It's one of the largest in the world. The water is very clean there, very fresh, and we can tap into that water body to sustain our farm. So the climate, the water, everything is really absolutely perfect for the cultivation of not only cannabis but high value crops as well.
Wow, well that's awesome. So I have been joined with a guest, and we're gonna have to get her name up on the screen, but I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mohameda El Muhajir. I'm with Wax Print Media. I'm actually based in Accra, Ghana, but today I happen to be in Philadelphia, a longtime supporter and collaborator with Black Cannabis Week and DACO. So I'm just really happy to be here and really feel strongly about making the connection. So, Nana, I'm glad to see that you are finally a part of Black Cannabis Week. It's good to see this happening.
Thank you very much. Good to see you as well. You're welcome. You say you're based in Accra?
Yes, we have met before. I actually a couple years ago I came to your office to make an introduction with Black
Okay.
Cannabis. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Muhammada is our eyes and ears on the
Awesome.
ground. So we're like super excited to be making this connection because like I said, throughout the diaspora, the more that I have communicated with people, if that's from Jamaica, if that's from Zimbabwe, I mean, there are many of the same issues and concerns. So we need to open up this conversation amongst each other and share so that we can move forward. One of the things that I mentioned, history was our first day of this conversation. For Black Cannabis Week. And one of the things that was discussed was the dependence on Black labor, okay, in the United States. Because one of the things that many of those I mean, earlier settlers, colonists, agreed was that there was no man, no white man, is what they said, nor Black woman fit to manage this crop like a Black man. They didn't use that word, they used something else, and they actually called the crop that. And we know that, and I read one of the articles you mentioned about many of the uses that cannabis was used for. One of those people who right here in the city that I live in, who was James Fortin, he was a sail maker. And he was really very, very rich. And one of the things that I liked about his story is that as rich as he could not vote. But what he did is that he took his money and revenue to free more Black people. So
Okay.
as much as I hate to know that hemp was one of the reasons or one of the reasons that made it possible for us to be transported here to the United States, because before then the sales were fragile. They weren't standing, lasting very well. But because of the innovation that he did with the sales in hemp, we were able to come here. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting was a conversation that we had earlier about about the Africans that stayed on on the continent. I don't know if you want to share that, but but I thought that was an interesting comment that you made.
Yeah, I guess it is a very interesting comment. Um, I think that if I get you right, in terms of the uses, I mean, I don't know what name they called it over there. I mean, I can imagine. I think probably something insulting if they said it's just black
Yeah,
men under
it
it.
was very insulting.
But I mean, I don't think we need to focus on that. I think that we have women farmers,
Mhm.
and we encourage women farmers to get involved. And in the illegal cultivation that's taking place at the moment, if I could mention that, the women play a very big role in cleaning up the marijuana, because it's not hemp, it's marijuana, separating buds and all that. They ensure the storage and drying and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily something that only men can do. We've got some great women farmers over there
Mhm.
who know they know the business. They know what they're doing. So um, I mean, that's all I can say on that, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. I think.
Yeah. No, and that's awesome, because I mean, one of the things we know is that women take care of the families. And if they don't have revenue coming in, they tend to do other things that may not be as healthy for them. So, same thing here. There are a lot of women who are seeking cannabis as an economic outlet and have been for years. As I've, grown more versed in talking to more people, I have learned like so many like generations of people where the grandmother or the great grandmother was growing to take care of the family and make ends meet. At the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, this is a plant. And the reason that this plant, which was grown for centuries, actually became prohibited was really because of racism.
Yes.
Was because of racism. And and that was one of the things going to the UN that I learned. It was like, oh, everybody, it was legal, and until Harry Anslinger and his crew of people from the United States went to lobby the UN and say, hey, cut it out, this stuff is illegal, these people are bad. But many of us see this as a plant. How do they see it in your region of Ghana or throughout the country? How do they see this?
Well, it saddens me to say that the Anslinger theory is something that's predominant here, and everything that DEA guy said about cannabis is something that our leaders here have taken up, and they've run with it. And that's why we've had and still do have this war on drugs, so to speak. That's why plantations that are currently being cultivated at the moment, granted they're illegal, are being torn up and burnt, and you know and people being arrested and imprisoned between 5 and 20 years and 15 years and all that kind of stuff, because they've bought into that theory and they believe it is, you said quite rightly, it's a plant. And that's all it is. It's a plant. But here in Ghana, we call it like the devil's plant. I mean, it's unbelievable. But that has been born out of what the West have been saying about it. And we at the association are trying to change people's mind about it so that they understand that, look, it's just a plant. It's nothing more than a plant. But it's also a very valuable plant. It can do so many things for us. And it's taken a while to get people to start considering what we're saying because just like in the USA, the people who are still cultivating illegally now have been cultivating for generations. It's an industry that great grandfathers have passed to grandfathers, who've passed to fathers, who've passed to sons. You know, that's what's been happening, especially in the Volta region of Ghana and the you know, these are two regions where the cultivation of cannabis are predominant. And as I say, it's generational. Um, and these people all know the good values of it. We all know. I mean, there are times when we are not well, and mother would bring out a little bottle that had some cannabis in with other leaves and stuff like that, and give you a spoonful and you'd soon be sweating the coal out. You know, it's also something that you could rub on a on. Let's say you fell over and you hurt your bone or you hurt a muscle and it was inflamed. You could also rub it on there and it would also ease the pain and bring the inflammation down. Oh, we all know the benefits of it, but it's been bastardized by the West, and unfortunately, you know, neo-colonialism. You know all about neo-colonialism. We live in a neo-colonialist society. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, come and see people crying because the Queen had passed away. You know, forgetting that she's the head of an imperialist and an empire which we were all a part of and which we've all been brutalized by and lots of different things. So they hold to that, but we are changing their minds. You
Um,
know, we are letting them know that it is something that is good. It's not only medicinally good, it's also good industrially and for our economy in terms of generating finance for our gross domestic product. Once we have a situation where there's legalization, regulation, and taxation, the government will see that it will generate a new revenue stream, which will allow them to socially intervene with low cost housing and various other things, education, health service. It will allow them because it will generate the money that they need that they don't currently have to come in and do some of these things instead of really feeding us lip service election after election. So it's a slow process. It's a slow process. You've got to have patience. You've got to have patience in putting across the message, and it's something that we're committed to doing until the vast majority of Ghanaians are aware of its potential. What we tend to find is the Christians are the ones who hold dear the words of Van Slinger. They're the ones who, they bring out the Bible as well and all different kinds of things to justify it. But
Yeah, well, the herb, it was already stated. Herb is for medicine.
yeah,
Muhammad has a
exactly.
question. I'm gonna let her ask her question.
I want you brought up, the whole idea of neo-colonialism and how much revenue could actually be generated, from the production. And I'm just curious on your thoughts of how much you think the resistance in Ghana and probably many other African countries is coming from the encouragement of maybe the West, who don't want to see them beyond aid, who don't want to see them, having this alternative, revenue stream, that also support the church as well. It's all kind of one entity. I'm just curious to, your thoughts on how much of the resistance do you think is actually coming from outside versus internally, and when it comes to cannabis production and
Well,
development of the industry?
I think it's more internally,
Okay.
to be honest with you. I think externally, if people are true to themselves, they can see what the West is doing now
Mm-hmm.
with cannabis. It's all over the place, not even the West, Asia, the whole of Europe, Canada's, the Americas, even China, Japan, Malaysia the other day. So I think that it's just something that's indoctrination. It's in our heads, and it takes its time to filter out of our heads. It's like the saying, "You can't see the wood because of the trees," sort of thing. And you see, the Christian community, they form 80% of the electorate. So the politicians are afraid. They don't want to upset the apple cart with the Christians, because where would their votes come from? How will they maintain power? So you see, sometimes the Christian lobby is a very strong lobby. And to a certain extent, they've played a big role in delaying everything, I can tell you, because we could have had this all done and dusted 2 years ago. But we've had, even before the president assented in May 2020, we had the Christian lobby go to the Jubilee House to lobby the president, and in fact to beg the president not to assent to the law change. It was serious. And even after the president assented, the Christian lobby is still very, very strong. It's so strong that, in fact, one woman went to the Supreme Court and laid a claim to the Supreme judges that said that when there was an amendment to the Narcotics Control Commission Act 1019, that there wasn't debate, and that was contrary to Section 106 of our Constitution. And it was upheld. Her claim was upheld, and the courts upheld her claim by 4 judges to 3. And so we have a situation now where a key section of the law, Section 43, that gives the minister the power to grant licenses for the cultivation, has been struck out. And actually, in October, the courts will resume, and there will be a review of that decision. And of course, the parliamentarians were very, very angry about it, because it basically means that the parliamentarians, sitting in parliament, sat over and adjudicated over an illegality. And basically, that means that they don't know what they were doing. And so they've had a fisticuffs between themselves, because communication is a great thing. But because the level of communication between the parliamentarians, the Attorney General's Department, and the Supreme Court was almost non existent, the Supreme Court judges believed that when they heard the word weed, that it was something we didn't want in our society. They didn't understand that government was leading the charge in this law change, and they also have the support of the opposition. So, in fact, it was a complete bipartisan swing to have this change in government. The Attorney General, at the time when this lady went to the Supreme Court, was actually finishing off the legislative instrument, and he didn't know that the case was going to court. And his second in command, his second deputy attorney general, actually went to represent the Speaker of the House and the Attorney General. And really, she didn't know much of what was going on anyway. She didn't represent. She offered no evidence. She didn't refer to the Hansard or anything to demonstrate that there was debate or anything like that. And so the courts just made that ruling. But we are confident it's going to be overruled. The AG has already prepared the review. The parliamentarians and the Supreme Court judges have already, had their punch up. The Supreme Court realized they did something wrong, and so that's going to be thrown out come the first or second week in October. But
Well, we are really looking forward. We're looking forward to that time, because we know that that's going to mean a lot for Ghanaians. So we have to wrap it up. But I wanted to. I know earlier last week we talked about some of the collective farmer work that you were doing. Can you share with us what that looks like? How does that feel to you, being able to collectively work with a group of farmers and communities to cultivate and make sure that this industry is alive and well in Ghana?
well, the other arm that we operate with is called the Empire Agri Ghana Limited. I think you can just see it in the background there. Hempire Agri Ghana Limited. It's a company, and what we've done is we've encouraged people to come in and register with us, so that basically we get all their paperwork done. We get their company registered, bank accounts, we give them an off-taker agreement, we prepare their business plan. Because we signed an off-taker agreement with a company based in Portugal called Seringa, and this was even before the law was even done. People questioned the validity of signing that off-takers agreement, but we just didn't mind them, to be perfectly honest with you. So we offer farmers an off-taking agreement that they can buy into. They register with us. We have a land bank. We have over 15,000 acres that is earmarked as our land bank for farmers to go and farm. Farmers can buy into that, be it 35 acres, 60 acres, 90 acres, or 130 acres. And basically, the terms of their off-taking agreement says that if they want to cultivate on land space of 35 acres, they will cultivate 25,000 kilos of industrial hemp, and they'll be paid 500,000 US. On the second option, they can work on up to 60 acres, cultivate 50,000 kilos, they'll be paid $1 million US. On the third option, they work on a land space of up to 90 acres, they'll produce 75,000 kilos, they'll be paid 1.5 million US. And the fourth option is working on a land space of up to 130 acres, you provide 100,000 kilos, you get paid 2.4 million. So we have over 150 farmer groups that have registered with us. Some have their own lands, but the vast majority will be using land from our land bank. But we are talking about what we've called enclave farming. So we've given them off-takers agreement. We've assisted them in registering their offices, their companies. We've assisted them in opening a bank account where we bank as well. And also they've got the off-takers agreement and the business plan. And they've been waiting just like we have been waiting for the get-go. And then we'll start the cultivation. To be honest, that in that respect, the future is quite bright. These are our main constituents, who we communicate with every week to let them know what's happening. There are times we go and lobby Parliament, so we'll get a huge delegation of farmers coming from different regions. We'll meet at Parliament, go into Parliament, lobby the parliamentarians, let them know we're still here. We participate on the Parliamentary Select Committee, where we look in detail about the needs of farmers and how we can craft a law that best suits the needs of the farmers and creates employment and lots of different things.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. Nana, and just like very, very promising, just very promising to the people of your region and to the country, because I think this can be an example throughout the whole country as well as other countries throughout Africa, because I am seeing some progressive work. I especially love to see that work when it is Black led. I remember we had our first conference. We were scrambling for someone from from um, from the continent, anybody who was Black. And that was about 5 years ago. And there was no one that we could get to come over. And a group from Lesotho came over, but they weren't Black. And so it is so good when we can hear these contributions being made within our communities, because we know what our communities need. We know what our communities want. We listen. We give feedback, and we move forward. And that's what we want to see in this industry. We want to see us moving forward, because, like we discussed earlier, there's a historical context from on the continent to here in the United States. There's a historical context and connection that we have to this plant. And I am so glad that we are all here to now claim our rightful place, claim our rightful place in this industry. So, Nana, I can talk to you all day. I look forward to coming to visit you when I come to Accra. If anybody else wants to come see you, where can they find you?
They can find us. Our offices are in East Legon. Um,
You know what, Nana? We're gonna start with a website.
okay, the website. Let me tell you the website.
Yeah.
Social media, and if not, we'll type it in so people will be able
Shall
to
I,
have
shall I
that.
put it in the Shall I put it in the chat?
I have it, so I'll make sure
Oh,
when
you have it.
we
Okay.
share this that for those people who missed it, that they will have that information. So again, thank you for taking time out in your day, and happy Black Cannabis Week.
Thank you too. Happy Black Cannabis Week to you too. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Um, I'm over the moon actually, because I know I'm communicating with so many people, and this is putting Ghana on the map. So our doors are open for anyone who wishes to come to Ghana and come and see us. Our doors are wide open. Please feel very welcome to come through our doors and to discuss the future of cannabis in Ghana. If you're investors or you're farmers or you're just people who have an interest, our doors are wide open to you. You're all very, very welcome.
Uh-oh, you may have a floodgate of people rushing over. I don't know if you want to say
Well,
that.
well, we'll be here. We'll be here. We'll be here.
All right. Thank you so much, Nana. You take
Thank
care.
you very much, Sherry. Thank you very much, Sharon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, my dear man. When are you coming back to Ghana?
I'm coming back next week, so I'll
Oh,
pop over.
okay.
I'm also in East Legon too. So
See you then. See
all
you
right.
next week.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, take